is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Optimize You podcast. We are the podcast helping you optimize feeling and looking your best every single week. If you're new to the podcast, make sure you subscribe. If you're not new, make sure you share it with a friend, coworker, family member. We appreciate all the help. And now in today's podcast.
I know these people by name because just from working in gyms over the years, and it's the same guys or girls that either had personal trainers at one point or have never had them, but I could call this person's routine when they come in the gym, know exactly what they're going to do, probably the weights that they're going to lift, and I'll tell you if not 100% of their workout, probably 90% of their workout, what they're going to do when they're going to be in there, how long they're going to be in there, because they do it every day, right? And so it's like you see them constantly doing the same thing, the same routine. I've even seen in some cases, some scenarios where people are trying to build muscle, get stronger. They want to look a certain way. And I even had one client come to me and say that he spends about 60 to 90 minutes after his workout doing cardio, like some sort of variation or form of cardio.
60 to 90
minutes minimum. And this is like 4 to 5 times a week. And like,
holy shit.
Yeah.
When does this guy have time to do anything?
Exactly. Right. And so I was like, okay, well, let's look at your weight regimen. Like, what's your strength training routine look like? What's the strength portion look like of the workout? Oh, well, I usually do some bench. I usually do some triceps, some biceps, some abs. And then based on that, kind of whatever I'm feeling for the day. But I always finish up with at least 60 to 90 minutes of cardio, sometimes longer. So I'm like, he's in the gym for like 3 hours. Right. It's just like, dude, hour to hour and a half weights, hour to hour and a half cardio, some sort of variation of a cardio, incline run, jogging on the treadmill, elliptical, Stairmaster, bike, whatever, right? Like some variation. And so I'm like, dude, like my first response to somebody like that, or him specifically, was like, you're doing way too much. It's the same thing that you and I have said, like, he's doing the 80% of the work that yields 20% results. Like, he's the definition of this. And so when I think of this person, I like have his, I won't use his name, but I have him in mind because he was the definition of just doing way too much of the stuff that doesn't move the needle and just being in there. And I think that's a lot of people. It's like, they can check the box of being in the gym. So they get that fix or that high or that dopamine hit or that accomplishment of like, hey, I went today. But they have the other half of them feeling discouraged because they look the same, they feel the same, they lift around the same weights, their body hasn't been changing, and they've probably been doing this, if not months on end, years. And so their ability to adapt to what they've been doing in that same exact routine time and time again, day in and day out, of course, you're on a maintenance program at this point, right? Like you need to in order to continue to look the way that you do right now, you need to keep showing up and doing exactly what you're doing each and every single time you go to the gym. So you're on a maintenance protocol. You're not on anything that's progressing going forward to change your look, your shape, your body transformation, like nothing. You're doing a maintenance protocol is basically. Have you seen people like that, or do you know people like that, or maybe have you experienced it yourself?
I was going to say, yeah, I've seen a lot of people like that, and I've also experienced it myself where I think there's a lot of different versions of this, right? Because you have the people that, like you said, they're doing the same thing in, day out, and they're using the same weight. So they're not really overloading. They're not progressively overloading, adding reps, adding weight, adding like more time under tension, whatever it may be. And so then they see the same results. I've seen those people that all they do is go to the gym and do cardio, right? That's their way of trying to, and that's like, again, we've talked about this many times in the podcast, your body adapts to cardio. So it's going to naturally be more, it's going to burn less calories for the same amount over time. Right. And so if that's your goal, is to burn really a lot of calories, you see that person who's on the Stairmaster for an hour every day. Right, you see the person who always is benching the same amount of weight, who's doing the same thing every day, and then you see the versions. I'm more like relate with that guy who you're talking about, who would do way too much. Right, I've never been like a big cardio guy, so I wasn't doing the hour and a half cardio that he was doing, but I would do plenty of cardio, and I was in the gym 6-7 days a week. Right. And for me, like I just was not seeing the results I wanted to, because I was doing way too much. I was putting so much stress on my body that nothing was really happening. And also the opposite was happening at times where I was seeing like weights go down. I felt terrible. I wasn't sleeping good. All of those things happen. But then also there's the other version of it where it's like I think there's like this version of person two who is doing way too much to combat eating like complete shit, right? Or to combat their going out on the weekends and getting hammered, right? Like that was me too. So I was the guy who was like doing way too much because I thought that's what it was that I needed to do, is to grow, is to do more and more and continue pushing it in the gym. And then also there's been the versions of me where it's like get hammered Thursday through Saturday and like try to just go nuts on myself in the gym with cardio and weight training and whatever to try to keep the body that I wanted to, or the version of myself I wanted to see in the mirror, while actually still being able to party.
Yeah, and like those options that you just labeled right now are two beautiful options of staying the same, lack of progression, looking the same. And it's just like, yeah, I'm going to do what I can during the week because as soon as I go out, this is like my justification of me working out during the week so that I can go out and party on the weekend, and it's okay because I worked out. So, and what you do is you just keep ping ponging back and forth between like, okay, I get a little bit of progression and then I do so much just to undo it, and like and be detrimental to the things that I just worked so hard at during the week. And so they're like conflicting, you're saying. And so it's enough just to stay right where you're at. And you see that all the time. You see people that constantly like go out, drink, party. They do a little bit during the week, but it's just enough to like maintain where they're currently at. They're not like constantly stacking brick by brick and there's like this compounding progression over an extended period of time. They just stack some bricks and then they, when the weekend comes, they just knock some over that they just stacked, and so their wall is only like, you know,
Well,
it stays the same.
like I would even argue that that approach is you're actually like knocking more bricks off the table like then it actually is there, because I like that's what I found with myself at least. And this all obviously depends on what the extent is of the weekend and the eating and the drinking and whatever, but I've found that a lot of times what you don't realize, you're trying to stay in the same shape and see the same body, and like you might be able to keep that for a long enough period of time, but you just wear yourself down because you're putting stress on your body, killing yourself in the gym with cardio and weights during the week, and then you're putting so much stress on your body, killing it with like not like junk food and tons of booze and partying and stuff like that. And so it's like this never ending stress cycle that just wears you down, and eventually it really goes the opposite direction of what you want, is what I've found, at least with myself.
Yeah, it's like it's at best you're knocking down what you just built. Most of the times it's worse, like what you're saying. Like you'll knock down even more than what you built during that week, and then it can compound in the opposite direction. And so it's like if somebody wants to actually have progression in the way that they look and feel and operate, and they feel like they've just been putting in all this work, but they don't really have anything to show for it, there's a first like handful of things that you should look at right away immediately. So number one being what you're doing outside of the gym. So if you're partying, like what Alex was saying, you're drinking alcohol, like all these things are stacking the cards against you. And so those are the first things to look at, because it doesn't matter how hard you train in the gym. If you're doing the things outside of the gym that are more detrimental to your progress than anything, I don't care how hard you're working in the gym, you're just putting yourself behind the eight ball the entire time. So like address those factors first outside of the gym. So if you're partying and it's too much to the rate at which you're not seeing progression and you're actually going backwards, you're seeing regression, then you got to make that you're like, okay, I got to mitigate this. I got to control this a little bit, maybe not completely turn it all the way off, but you got to significantly make a change there. And if you do that, even if you didn't change anything else, you start to see at least a little bit more progression than what you were doing before. So I think the stuff outside of the gym is super important. We talk about it all the time: hydration, sleep, those sort of things. Like those are all going to be massive to your progression. They're the simple things that everybody talks about that people know we know we should be doing them, but we just don't. We're like, oh, I can skip that part. Like I can operate at high stress. I can operate off 4 to 5 hours of sleep. Yeah. Just because you can doesn't mean it's optimal, right? Like how long are you just going to scratch and claw by? So if you truly want to make change, like you'll care about those things and do those things. Those are the 20% that actually yield the 80% outcome. So if you are going to focus on something small, what's some other things you'd have somebody in that scenario or situation that you'd have them focus on, man, like, okay, sleep, let's say hydration. Um, I said some stuff outside of the gym. What would you recommend to somebody that they could focus on right here, right now to start seeing some progress?
Coming at it from like a guy, probably a place that's been there, I would say like really do your best to find balance. Like I think that it's easy to like just completely either turn things off, like you said, or go like crazy on them. Um, Try to find like if you are struggling with alcohol, or you find that like you have more of like an all or nothing mindset with like food and alcohol, or one or the other, then I would say like a really good approach is just like to really do your best to give yourself grace, but also just find some sort of balance within, even just like a 70-30 approach where it's like, let's just have 70% of my food and drinks come from like quality sources, nutritious whole foods. And then like you can have that 30% include booze, right? It's like, and it's not a direct science, but, and this is a little bit harder to make tangible, so to speak. But I'm just like, that's what came to my mind first, because I know that it took me so long to figure that out, where I was like, either fully on or fully off. And like, and then I would be so rigid with my food because I thought that I needed to do that to combat the weekend. And like, I think that figuring out if you just like can't stop doing things, or you can't stop drinking on the weekends, and oh, like I want to do this social thing, well then set a number for yourself. Like be like, you know what, I'm gonna have fun this weekend, but I'm gonna keep it under 3 drinks, or I'm gonna keep it under 4 drinks, or whatever it is. Like maybe just go off of what you're doing. Like if you're like drinking 10 drinks, then go to 7. Like I don't know, like all this stuff is going to to help you out. But I would say that the quicker you can find more of a balance, and I know balance is like such a stupid word, like it's tough to really understand what it is, but the more you can find moderation with things, and moderation with things that people deem bad. Like it's not like alcohol is like, I know it's not going to necessarily help you achieve your health goals, but if it is something that you use socially, like that can be beneficial, like maybe like fostering connections and growing with friends and family and stuff like that, that can serve a benefit. And so like finding a moderation approach, like finding a number that works for you, that's what you're going to do when you go out. Food wise, like understanding that like we don't need to be 0 or 100 or like really amazing with our food quality, or like have it just completely dog shit. Like that you can like figure out what you really enjoy eating throughout the week, and maybe some of the foods you struggle with, and try to include those in your plan. Like if you love desserts like I do, I like to eat dessert like throughout the day. Like it's not just something I just keep for like one day. And like, you know what, if I find that I'm maybe getting off track with my nutrition a little bit, then maybe I do tone back the desserts a little bit, but I still do include them in, right? But it's like just like having them there, having what you need to be successful in your plan, I think is a huge thing. But also just making sure that we're moderating things in the best way possible. That's one thing that I that kind of popped into my head as like for the person I'm visualizing, which is myself, which I think there's a lot of people out there who kind of maybe struggle with what you'd call an addictive personality, or like different like obsessive, like can obsess over something, like maybe their body, or they can you know go overboard with things, like have those tendencies. I think that's the approach I would go with for that person.
Yeah, and I think you brought to the surface a really good example in terms of like that's you were talking about yourself, right? Like you're like, that's how I visualize myself. So if like people are listening to this and they're trying to figure out like what you were talking about in the balances, there's so many different avenues that an individual can go, right? So I think the easiest way to think about it is exactly like how you were explaining it, is think about from the perspective of your own self, where it is that you want to go, and then what's required to be able to achieve that. Like, and so and you're all essentially all you're doing is you're setting a standard for yourself, your identity and your standard for you. And when you can do that, you're going to be able to filter through a lot of the noise much easier. So instead of going like, oh, well, Jason has a 6-pack and I see him drink on the weekends, it's like his standards are his standards. Like he's doing it the way he does. There's things that are going, flying way over the radar that you can't see. You're seeing the tip of the iceberg. So you have to set your own identity and standards for yourself based on what you're willing to commit to. So it could look something as simple as like this. It could be like, and 6-pack was just something that came to mind. Like, okay, I want to have a 6-pack, but I also like going out And I have to first of all see and figure out what is required for me personally to be able to attain that, because it's going to be different for everybody else. Maybe Jason was a former athlete. He was a super stud. He's got a little bit of um, belly fat, but it's not going to take him long to shred down and like see visible abs. For me, it's going to take longer. So you have to think for your own individual like situation and scenario. And I'm just using this as a hypothetical. It could be with anything. Like for me, in order to do that, I have to go, okay, this is my standard. I want to go out here and there, like on the weekends, maybe 1 or 2 days. Right now, I'm going out every single weekend. So, what's required to get the thing that I want to get? And now I can establish my standards. Well, if I go out, I'm going to have to limit how many drinks that I want. If I choose to go out, I'm going to have to not associate with certain people who are going to force me to go beyond that limit. I know if I'm just hanging out with them. Okay. I'm also going to have to progressively overload and weight train at least 3 to 4 times a week. I'm only doing 2 right now. Okay. I'm going to have to hydrate. I'm going to have to prioritize sleep at least 7 to 8 hours. Right now, I'm getting 4 to 5, right? And you start setting these standards for yourself, and you can very black and white see what's required and go, okay, am I willing to sign up for that? Am I willing to do those things for me? Because these are the standards that I'm setting for myself to be able to attain and achieve the things that I want to do. And if I'm willing to do that, it makes it much easier to pursue it and go like, okay, yeah, I'm signing up for this. Like I know what's required. I know what the roadmap is looking like. I'm committing to it and I'm going to do it. And that makes it very crystal clear for you versus just going, oh, I want this thing, but I'm not willing to do what's required and I'm not willing to do what it takes. And hopefully, if I just keep my fingers crossed, like I'll somehow get there. And that's what people do. They're like, oh, well, I went to the gym twice. I know it's not 4 times, which is required, but it was close enough. And so I'm going to give myself credit in that. And it's okay if I go just drink on the weekend because I went to the gym twice, and people start negotiating and justifying. And we have to remember that the direction that we're going towards and the goals that we're trying to achieve, they don't give a shit about us negotiating and justifying. It takes what it takes. And we're either willing to put it in or we're not. And we have to look at it for face value like that. And once we do that and just trim the fat, cut the BS, and have that honest conversation with ourselves and truly ask yourself, am I willing to do what it takes? If I know what it takes and it's laid out, usually a coach can lay it out for you based on your scenario and situation. If they're honest with you and be like, hey, this is what it takes. Are you willing to do that? And if not, you can't be upset by not getting the thing because you're not willing to do what it takes. Right. So you have to set these standards for yourself and be like, that direction that I'm wanting to go requires me to work out a certain amount of days, requires me to eat a certain way, requires me to set boundaries with certain people, requires me to get a certain amount of sleep and prioritize that. And like you start listing off all these things. And if you're not willing to do those things, you can't be upset about not achieving those goals because you weren't willing to commit to those standards in the first place. Right. And so you look like you got something to say about that. What do you think?
Oh no, well, I mean, I was just gonna say like, yeah, I did. Literally, I think that it goes down to like what's important, right? I think that like we've talked about this a lot on the podcast too, where it's like, a lot of times we go after things that we don't actually want, right? And then the telltale sign of that is if you're not achieving it, really, because if you're not achieving it, like then you probably don't want it that bad, because if you did, you would go after it. But the thing is, what people don't understand is that's perfectly fine, right? Like it's perfectly fine to like not want to have a six pack. It's perfectly fine to not want to be the best at whatever job you have. Like it's perfectly fine, like to like, cause I'll be honest with you, like I had this come up with my job recently where I'm like, I'd kind of like, initially I was like, oh, I want to be the best, right? Like I always want to be the best at everything I do. And I realized I was like, what's actually important to me? Like, oh, important to me is like having freedom. So it's like, it's not necessarily being the best. It's like being like good at it. It's like being good at it in the sense that like I'm above average and I'm like, maybe top 10-15% in the office, right? It's not the best. It's like, I want to be like above average, I want to be like pretty elite, but I don't need to be the best. And I think like giving myself the permission on that, like kind of brings a weight off the shoulders. It's like, oh, I don't need to like do this. Oh, the best would do this. Like the best would do this. Well, what does it mean to be in the top 15%? Like, well, that's not going to necessarily need to do these other things that the best person needs to do. It's just maintaining. It's more or less maintaining, and it's maybe like growing in certain aspects, figuring out where I'm lacking, and like working on those things. Like that's what, like, that's an example personally in my life that I figured out with this kind of thing. Where it's like, for the longest time I figured in different areas, oh, I always need to be the best at it, but like I wasn't always like willing to put in the effort to be the best. So did I really want to be the best? No. I wanted to say I wanted to be the best, right? But really, I just like didn't really care that much about being the best. It was just like, that's the identity that I kind of tried to be. And it's like, oh, it's like kind of a weight off your shoulders when you like admit to yourself that, oh, I don't need this, or I don't need a six pack. Like, I just want to like feel good about myself. Oh, I
Yeah.
don't need to get 10% body fat. Like, I just want to look like, I just want to like be good with what I see in the mirror. Like, I want to be good, and I want to be able to take my shirt off and be confident. And it's like, oh, that's like, it's more attainable, right? But also, it's like you're actually going to attain it because that's what you actually want.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's okay to admit those things. Matter of fact, I think it's required because, like you said, it's going to take this pressure off your shoulders that you're putting on that's probably unnecessary, that's blocking you from achieving what you truly want. Because there's a difference between saying that like we want something and we think it would be cool, but deep down we're like, at a convenience it would be cool, like to achieve it the easiest way possible. But if I look at the steps required to be able to attain that thing, and I'm not willing to commit to that, I'm not willing to set those standards, that's fine. You got to just be like, okay, well, I see what it takes. Like, that sucks. I don't want to do it. I see what's required. Like, that helped. Honestly, it happened with me in minor league ball, dude. It happened with me in baseball. And I was like, I see the kind of time that needs to be put in, the effort, the consistency. I'm not having fun with this anymore. I'm not even sure I want to still be here. Like, and I seen guys putting in way more work. So that's why, like, I have a respect for the guys at the highest level. I'm like, dude, they've gone through the dirt. Like, people are like, damn, they get paid so much money. I'm like, you can't do what they do. I promise you that. Like, I tried. I thought, trust me, I thought I could too. And like, it's harder than you think. And those guys literally have done every single step. Granted, there's people with absolute who are blessed and they have gifts, and there's outliers, etc. But the guys that you see are the less than 1% at the highest level. And it's because they were willing to commit to the standards that are required to be there. I wasn't. I was, and as soon as I admitted that, I was like, "Oh man, yeah, it's cool. Like, there's no pressure on me to like put in all this work to like, I'm not willing to commit to that. Like, I care about other things. Like, I want to enjoy life now. I'm at that time where I want to like explore different things. I want to start a career and go down strength and conditioning and personal training, do that thing. And so my gears shifted, and I wanted something else more than I wanted that. And I think people have to realize that it's like, you may start out thinking that you want one thing, but have that deep, true, honest conversation and be like, okay, after I see what it takes, do I still want that thing? Am I willing to experience every single emotion possible to be able to obtain this thing, and still, when the dust settles, go through it and shine and be on the other side of it? Am I willing to go through that storm? And if not, that's fine. Just understand your standards that you're setting for yourself are not quite what's required to be able to attain the thing that you may think you want. And so there's so much pressure let off your shoulders by just saying, yeah, you know what? I don't want that. So
That's good. And like, yeah, I think I love that what you said about, I mean, the baseball comparison is huge. Cause yeah, I mean, those people that I've seen that I played with that have gotten to the league or playing in the league, I mean, they wanted it so bad. Yeah. They were meant to be doing that, and they put in the work, and they were like, just, they lived, breathed baseball. Right. So I think that's huge. But also, just like, if you're that person, you are going after some sort of health and fitness goal, or you're going after any goal, or you want to do this or that, it would be a really good approach to just like find somebody who's done it and achieve that result that you're after, and pick their brain. Or like, maybe there's something online that you can figure out what did they do to get there, and like figure out if and I would even challenge people to, like, if that is the case, if you're like, oh, I want a six pack, and you seek out 5 people who have done it and figure out what they've done, because they're going to have different stories and approaches and whatever. And you know that. And if you can find somebody who had a similar background to you, even better. Now, this might be a tough approach, but I think that is a huge thing. If you can find that with whatever goal you have, and you can really be real with yourself if you're willing to put in that work, or if you really want that goal enough to do the work required to achieve it, then you're going to save yourself some time and headaches and frustration, and then maybe you can put your goal down a little bit more, or like figure out more realistic or something like that's within the standards of that you're gonna pursue, and then you're gonna be a lot better off in the long run, because you're not just gonna be spinning your wheels trying to get something that you really don't want.
Yeah. And I think the last thing I would add is like, once you've established that goal, or if you're still trying to find what that thing is that you want to pursue, sometimes we pick goals that we have no business picking, but something of us kind of wants it, but it's so far fetched that it's not even going to be close to obtainable. And that's fine too. But you are going to have scenarios where I suggest and recommend everybody pick something that also caters to like your own unique advantage that you have, right? Like everybody has one. Even if you don't know what it is, maybe you have a creative side to you. Maybe you naturally are just strong as shit. You've been that person who can kind of just lift weights and like throw weights around, or like, whatever it is. But if you kind of pick something that you're naturally already kind of good at, but maybe the skill hasn't been sharpened or developed or something like that, you're going to find a lot more success and progression really fast early on, which will help you keep going in that thing. So that's what I always recommend, is like, find something or a goal that you at least have some sort of unique skill or advantage that you kind of already have a leg up on most people on it, like starting from scratch, because you're naturally good at whatever the thing is, like, and that'll make your journey so much more enjoyable, because you're naturally going to be better than people at it. Like, you're going to go, oh, I get the hang of this a lot quicker. Like, and it's just much more enjoyable. That's what I've found. So you don't always have to do that, but if you're sitting there and you're trying to figure out what that thing is and how you're trying to make progression and move in the right direction, sometimes think and cater to like your own unique advantage that you feel like, something that you do really well naturally that other people kind of, notice other people kind of struggle with, and you're like, oh, that's easy. That's easy for me. Kind of, maybe shift towards something like that.
I like it, dude. Well, hey, this has been a good podcast. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this one. If you did, make sure you just share it with a friend, family member, coworker, somebody who you think could benefit from it. We started out talking about people who struggle with just not seeing results in the gym, right? The different kinds of people along those lines kind of drifted a little bit, but I think there's a lot of gold in this, as far as just, you can really take a lot about achieving goals, and also like some of the reasons why people don't achieve their goals, or why they spin their wheels and continue to have that same body that they've had. So hopefully this is helpful. We appreciate you listening and watching, and we will be talking to you soon.